What is going on, YouTube? It is Primitive here, and today I'm going to be bringing you my blue hybrid list that I used to go 5-0 in yesterday's True Champ Games event, as well as went 4-1 in the Mario's Gaming World event the day before. Now, this list has been very strong and very consistent, and I'm very happy with it. In these events, we did have the mulligan and sideboards live, so I do have my 10-card sideboard here to show you, which was very effective, and I'm very happy with it, but we'll get into that after we go through the main list. But with that being said, let's get straight on into it. Starting off with the Digitama, we did have 4 Kiaramon and 1 Upamon. Now, Kiaramon I think is much better in this list because with our rookie lineup, a lot of the times we just want to be Digivolving, promoting, and then leaving them there and not really wanting to attack. So Kiaramon you're going to get much more value out of with your Digimon just sitting right there, as to where with Upamon you have to attack to get value. And you don't always want to attack because you kind of want your Madokis or your Suyakumons just chilling there. But I did have so many matches where I went through my 4 eggs and I had the ability to go for a 5th egg if I had it, but I was only playing the 4, so when I kind of had that happen so many times, I realized I'll just go up to a 5th egg, so that way I can get that extra Digimon out coming out from raising, as well as be able to get that extra draw, that extra cycle. So bumped it up to 5. Upamon is just the next best egg. I think Kiaramon's better in this list, so we just went with the 4 and the 1. Now, getting on into the rookies, we are going to be having 4 of the BT4 Strabimon. This card's just super insane. You're going to be able to reveal the top 3, grab a hybrid and a tamer, which is going to hit super consistently. A lot of times you're hitting 2, but most of the time you can just hit 1, and even that is just fine because you get to search the top 3, grab whatever it is that you need. But this card is super consistent. I was really happy with this. I was playing it at 3 for a little bit and very quickly went up to 4 just because this is probably the best searcher. I'm not a big fan of the other Strabimon, so I'm just playing this one. Then we're going to be having 4 Suyakumon. This card is just super cracked in the current format because there's so much Digivolution reduction in the current format with things like JP or Rhino Beetlemon or Jet Sylphie or Beowulfmon, stuff like that, that being able to slow down hybrid decks that are trying to go for that a lot by having Suyakumon on the board is just really good. I wanted to max this out because it's a card that you really kind of want to get out consistently early in the game so your opponent doesn't start to snowball, and it makes their early game a lot more awkward, and it's just really good in the end game because slowing down your opponent from going up into the Rhino for 1, instead they have to Digivolve for 3, makes it a lot of times where they don't have enough memory to go up to the full line, and that's just going to be very impactful in a lot of the current matchups. And this is one of those things where I feel like if I didn't play 4 of this, the green matchup would probably be a little bit harder, but since you have this at 4, you have a good consistency of being able to slow them down. Then we're going to be having 4 Madoki Betamon. This card is also really good in the current format, especially in the mirror match where there's going to be a lot of blue hybrids. So you can shut off things like memory boosts. You can shut off Bokomons, which are going to be in a lot of decks. It's also really good in purple because you can shut down like Jack Raids and just other various ways to gain memory. So this is one of the main reasons why I'm playing the Kiaramon, is because we are maxed out 4-4 here. So there's a lot of times where you just have these chilling on the board and you can get multiple turns of use out of the Kiaramon. So I like these at 4 and 4. Shout out to my boy Isaac for telling me to go up to 4 of these instead of playing 2 of the other Strabimon, because the 2 Strabimon, the BT7 Strabimon, just does not work in this list at all. So once I cut this out for this, the rookies became a lot better, a lot more consistent. Then we're going to be having 2 Bokomon, arguably the best card to come out of BT7. It's just so consistent. It gives you a bunch of memory gain. The only downside to it is there's going to be a lot of memory blockers in the current format, and we don't have as many ways to get rid of rookies off the board as much as we have ways to like stun things. So sometimes Bokomon can be dead, but it's a good consistency card, but it is kind of a hindrance in the mirror match because you play this, and it's going to be, once you play this down, your opponent's going to be able to get a bunch of Sorajo memory, and they'll be able to keep stunning it, and it'll just sit there. You won't be able to get it off the board. You'll be just giving them free memory. So this is a card that I cut down to 2. I think it's fine at 2 in just pretty much every matchup, but I side it out versus the mirror match like every single time. And since the mirror match is pretty common right now, I decided to main deck 2, but it is just a really good card. It just can be kind of countered because a lot of people are expecting to play Bokomon, so there's going to be a lot of memory blockers, and it can become just kind of a dead card. So this is going to finish up the rookie lineup. Next up, getting into the hybrids, we're going to have 4 of the Korikaku. This is just pretty standard. This card's absolutely nuts. We're going to be able to keep stunning, keep stunning. You can Digivolve this one to stun and Digivolve another one on top to stun again, and then you can bring them back with Beowulfmon. This card's just super cracked. If you're playing blue hybrid, you're going to be playing 4 of the Korikaku. Then we're playing 4 Kumamon. This card is just pretty fantastic in the deck as well because you're going to be able to Digivolve for 2 to strip the bottom source of one of your opponent's Digimon. So if you have Kiaramon out, you can draw off of that. You can Digivolve Korikaku on top of it for 1 to be able to stun on top of that. But just being able to strip cards while also build up to Beowulfmon is just going to be really strong because we're trying to stun things here. They need to have no Digivolution sources. So it's just a hybrid that's very powerful that works really well with what this deck wants to do. And then I'm playing one of the BT4 Kendo. Now, this is a card that I was originally playing two of, and now it's going to be part one of a two-part one-ofs in this deck that we'll get into later. But Kendo is still very strong. Not only does it put you up to 9 hybrids, which is a very good thing, because there's a lot of times with this deck where you need to Digivolve into your hybrids early, and you might not necessarily get security checks in with those Digimon. You just need to cycle or stun, so you have to use them. And by going up a little bit in the or in the hybrid count here, you do have more chances to have those hybrids to go for 2 or 3 hybrids in a turn for the late game win. But I just really am a big fan of Kendo. I originally put it in here because I was having such a hard time with things like Madoki, getting rid of them. Because if you had Madoki and Siako on the board, then I would have to pay the 3 to go into Beowulf, and it became really hard to deal with. So Kendo is something that kind of helped that at a champion level. The thing about Kendo, though, is I don't usually just Digivolve this for 3 on top of something and then swing with it. This card I usually use a lot more to like pass turns. So let's say my opponent doesn't have a memory tamer and I'm at 2. I can just like Digivolve this on top of a rookie and raising to put them at 1, and then I can promote it next turn, swing in, and then bounce back whatever I need to bounce back. And it just kind of works like that. It's mostly a pass turn card, but it is also just a 9th hybrid, which has been really helpful to me, because one of the problems I had with this deck is I felt like I was using a lot of my hybrids early and was running out towards the late game when I would kind of need them more. So you had to be very careful by recycling them with Beowulfmon, but by going up with the hybrid count, you can be a little less strict on that. And so yeah, and then also Kendo is just kind of like one of my mascots at this point, so gotta show support. Then getting on into the ultimates, we are just playing the 4 Beowulfmon. This card is obviously just very powerful. You can Digivolve for 1 on top of your Korikakus to swing, bring them back. It works really well with Tommy because you want to be able to attack and recycle your Korikakus, and then you could stun. This card is also just a one of those cards where it can threaten to devastate wide boards really hard, because you can have Tommy played. You can Digivolve Korikaku on top of the Tommy. That will be 1 stun. Then you can Digivolve Beowulfmon on top of that for 1. Swing over one of your opponent's Digimon and then stun with the Tommy inheritable underneath it. And so that's essentially 2 cards stunned, 1 swung over, and then you can bounce 1. So you can just go really hard against wide boards with this for fairly cheap. And then also it does help us get up into our level 6s that we're about to get into for fairly cheap, because you can Digivolve into this for 1. But this card is just super good utility. Normally if I'm searching for hybrids and I hit this, I'll just grab it because I want to be playing 2 or 3 of these a game, because it's just so impactful and it puts on so much pressure, especially when you have a Tommy underneath it. Now getting into the megas, we are just playing 2 Zoolong. This card was so cracked the past couple days. There was so many games where I pretty much felt like I was going to lose, or it looked like I was going to lose, because my opponent just has 4 or 5 security. They have 4 or 5 Digimon on board. I have like 2 security. I've run out of stun cards, but then I can just go Digivolve for 2, Digivolve for 1 into Beowulf, and then Digivolve into this for 5. I get to strip the bottom of all my opponent's Digimon and then gain a memory for each card with no source. So when your opponent's going like really wide, you can just essentially play this for free, and then you get security attack +1 for each Digimon they have that doesn't have Digivolution sources. So if you were watching either Mario or True Champ Stevens streams the past couple days, you may have seen them spectating a couple of my matches where I went in with a Zoolong, and my opponents literally, I would swing 4 or 5 checks to completely clear, and then I could just go in for a hybrid for game from there, or I could swing in with whatever I have on the board. And this card just carried so hard. It punishes people so hard, and it works very naturally with how this deck works, because you want to be stripping a bunch and stunning a bunch. So you're going to play this ladder game kind of where you're going to be stripping your opponent's stuff, and they're going to be building on top of it to try to play around your Sorojo and your mats, so you don't gain as much memory. But eventually they're going to lose that war because you have way more cards to strip, especially when you can just strip for free with Sorojo. And so eventually they're just going to start going wide. So when you can stun going wide, you can go into a Zoolong and punish just so hard. There's not a lot of cards that are going to be able to deal with this, outside of like yellow, which has Wyvern's Breath, and then green because they have the Ancient Troymon and the Ancient Beetlemon, which this can trade into. But versus a lot of other decks, if they don't have boosted security like yellow, or if they're not playing other 13Ks, the only real thing that you can hit are things like Wyvern's Breath or hitting Susanomon. So most of the time, you're going to be able to get a lot of checks with this and be able to go in for games, so it just punishes people very hard. This card was just incredibly cracked. I think this is just the correct level 6. I'm not a big fan of Magna. I was a big fan of Magna for a little bit until I realized that I didn't have the aggression that I wanted in this list, and this just filled it super perfectly, and yeah, I love this. Then we're playing one Susanoo. There's a lot of people who weren't playing Susanoo in these lists, and they say Susanoo's a little bit of a win more card, but I think this card is almost necessary to play main deck because there's a lot of games versus yellow-purple you'll play where you'll end up in a position to where Susanoo is almost your only win condition because they'll start to recover a lot with Dynasmon on board, and you'll start to fall behind on security, and so your really only comeback condition is to be able to go into Susanoo, pop the Dynasmon, and be able to swing those 3 checks, and then start to like swing the tempo in your favor. And that's happened multiple times in the matchup. I've also been able to drop this against blue hybrid multiple times because we'll just be sitting there stunning each other, and then I can get into a turn where I get the multiple memory from Sorajos, I can play this, and then I can just swing in and then get that momentum to usually just go in with hybrids. So I think this card is almost crucial main deck because you're just going to end up in a lot of late game scenarios because of the stunniness of this deck, to where you need to be able to just have something that can go for huge checks, and that is not as conditional as a Zoolong, as to where if they just have like the one Dynasmon on board, then a Zoolong's not going to help you as much as to where this can kill the Dynasmon, and then you can swing for checks after it and they don't get to recover. So big fan of Susanoo in this list. Now getting into the Tamers, we're playing for Tommy. I don't think there's too much to say about this. This card's absolutely cracked. Being able to strip sources in a deck like this is just insane, especially since you can strip 3, and then stunning, it just works with every part of the deck. You just got to play this at 4 because it's so key. Then we're playing 3 Davis. This is our memory tamer. Davis is also just a very, very fantastic card. Going to be able to search the top 3, which helps with hitting our Beowulfs, or maybe if we want to hit the Kendo, or just whatever we're looking for. Maybe we need a Madoki and we don't have it. Davis, just a fantastic searcher, gain us memory. We all love Davis. Then we got 3 Sorajo. This card's just absolutely insane. Being able to gain 2 memory when your opponent has no sources, while also being able to strip sources, just puts your opponent in super bad scenarios. I'm only playing 3 because I am playing 2 of the starter deck mat. This card is just like a baby Sorajo. Obviously, you don't get to suspend to strip sources, which is a downside, but you still get to gain a memory if you don't have any sources with the mat. And it's also a 2-drop, and this fills memory curve so well. Sometimes you're at 2 and your opponent has a memory tamer, and like the best thing you can do is play something for 3 or 4, so you kind of waste some memory, but you can play this for 2, fill that out, and then play like Tommy for 3, and then your opponent is going to go to 3 anyway. Also, there's just a lot of times where I use this to just choke, especially in the early game where my opponents will put me to 1, and then I can just play Matt, put them at 1, and then now pretty much at the start of my turn, no matter what, I'll go to 2. And it just works really well. I really liked the 2-drop ability to just fill out curves and also have the potential to choke. There's not really a lot of things that you can play for 2, and I think that's something that is undervalued in a lot of decks, is the ability to have different costed cards that kind of have strong effects. And so yes, it's not as strong as Sorajo, but Sorajo can get a little bit of clunky if they're in your hand because you have to continually play them. Mats feel a little bit easier to play because they're 2-drop, and they also don't feel as bad to digivolve onto, because if you get rid of your Sorajo, you kind of get rid of a big resource, as to where you get rid of Matt, you played it for 2, gained a memory off of it, so you essentially played it for 1, and then you can digivolve on top of it with a hybrid and kind of just go on with it, and you don't really lose too much. So I just really like this card. It's just really it's a card that stacks up very easily, and it's very easy to play in the early game and can get a lot of value. And you're definitely, most games, if you play this early, you're going to gain way more than the 2 memory that you spent on it and just advantage from just gaining memory. So big fan of Matt. Now getting into the end of the list, we have the options. We have 4 Hammer Sparks. This card is one of, if not the most versatile cards in the entire game. You're going to be able to use this to gain memory, so you can extend your plays, just make a little bit better plays, or you can use it to choke your opponent. You can do so much with it, plus it has the security effect of gain 2 memory, which is obviously something that's very powerful. We've all hit Hammer Sparks in security that basically lose us the game, so we know the power of it, and it's also just help in security. The thing is with these new blue hybrid lists, they don't have a lot of cards in the deck that have security effects that can be comeback potential, and a lot of times that is kind of a downside. And Hammer Spark is a card that gives you potential and security to like help you come back in a game, or give you like a chance in security, while also being a card that is just extremely powerful in the main deck. So there's really no downside to playing it. Some people are playing less, but I just wanted maximum because I think Hammer Spark is so strong both as main deck and in a metagame like this where people want to hybrid a bunch. Being able to have Hammer Sparks to shorten their turns or just pass their turns is is going to be very helpful. Then I'm playing 2 Howling Memory Boost. This card is just super cracked in this list because we're going to be stunning a bunch of stuff, and then you could, like, if you get a Bokomon on your opponent's board, you can just infinitely stun it, and being able to play Howling to strip sources and stun something while you have Sora Joe on the board puts so much pressure on your opponent that they kind of have to do something that a lot of times they can't, because if you're playing a deck like Christmas, for example, where you're playing red rookies but no red Digimon on top of that, so you can't Digivolve on top of it, if I Howling it and stun it and strip its egg and stun it, it's just stuck there, and I'm going to gain the memory off of Sora Joe, and it's basically the same with things like Bokomon. So it just works really well, the deck. Not only is it going to help you gain memory with its delay effect, it's going to slow down your opponent by stunning them, but it's also going to just support your Mats and your Sora Joes, and so this card is just really, really good in this deck. Then we have our 1 Ice Wall, of course. Can only play 1. If I could play 4, I would love to, but did get restricted, so we're just playing the 1 of that we got. And then to finish it off, we are playing 1 Supreme Cannon. Now, this is a shout out to my boy Isaac for giving me the idea of playing this, because this card was super insane. I was talking about Kendo earlier, how I was playing 2, and now there's a kind of 2-part 1-of combo. I did take out one of the Kendos for the Supreme Cannon because they kind of served the same purpose of being able to get rid of things like the Madokis and the Siakos that kind of worsen my plays, but this let me do it without having to Digivolve, and that was really helpful because I could do things like Supreme Cannon, then Digivolve my hybrid on top of a Tamer and get my memory gain from Bokomon, and then be able to Digivolve into Beowulfmon for 1 and stuff like that. And so I wasn't 100% certain on this card yet because I hadn't tested it at all, so I just ended up taking out 1 Kendo to play the 1 Supreme Cannon and played it as a 1-of-1 to both have kind of the same general idea of why it's in the deck. But this card was pretty cool. I'm not 100% sure if I would play a second one. I do like the Kendo. The Kendo not only ups your hybrid count, but it's also kind of something that you can Digivolve on top of. So when you're playing in the blue mirror, if they strip your sources and you want to try to play around their Sora Joes or their Mats, you have another thing that you can Digivolve on top of, which is not really something that you can do with Supreme Cannon. So I kind of like it as a 1-of-1. This card was really good though. I played a bunch of matches where I played this and my opponents had like never had this played against them, and it was just so impactful that they're like, that card is cracked, and it was pretty good. It also came out of security one time and bounced I think 4 rookies back, so that was pretty insane. But yeah, it's a pretty good card, but that is going to be the end of the main deck. I'm really happy with these main 50. This is a deck that you could play in a no mulligan, no sideboard format because the main 50 are just very strong, but we did play in a mulligan sideboard format. So with that being said, I do have the side deck, and we'll get into that right now. First, we'll go ahead and get into the cards that I used to side deck into the blue hybrid mirror, which is going to be 2 Aqua Vipers and a Lobomon. Now, the Aqua Vipers I kind of stole from Izzy Cruz. This card was super cracked. We were playing, and he was my 1 loss in the Mario Gaming tournament, and I had a Bokomon I was stunning, and I was going to get so much memory from Sora Joes and Mats, but Aqua Vipered, side decked in, bounced back the Bokomon to bounce back, I think it was Korikaku and Kendo, and it killed my momentum super hard. I pretty much gained no memory because I didn't have a memory tamer, so I think I got put at like 1 or 2. Got choked for like the rest of the game. It was so, it was really bad for me, and this card was just really influential, so I decided going into the True Champ Game Tournament, I was going to try side decking this in. I did play it in the blue mirror, and it came in insanely clutch. My opponent had 5 Digimon on the board, and all I had was a stunned Korikakumon. And so I Aqua Vipered to bounce it back into my hand. And I had like 7 or 8 memory because of Sora Joe. So I bounced back the 2 Siakomons, used the Korikakumon I just bounced back to go on top of Tommy to stun one of the Digimon. So there's 2 Digimon unstunned left. And then I went into Beowulfmon to swing security, bounce back one of them with his effect, and then stun the other one with the Tommy effect. So with Aqua Viper, it basically gave me a combo because I bounced back the Korikaku to stun the entire board and get a security check. So it was super sick. I really like this in the mirror match. This is probably something we'll see more people do, unless it maybe just was only good that one time. It's not as good, but I feel like this is probably something people are going to do a little bit more because it was very good in the mirror match. And then the reason I put another Lobomon in is because I just wanted to have another hybrid, because in that matchup, it feels like a lot of the times you're playing this don't let your opponent gain memory off of Sora Joe and Matt type of deal. So this helps in both giving you another option to Digivolve on top one of your rookies to prevent that if you need to, but it's also just another hybrid that you can go and swing and just get extra checks early and try to go for game. And so it was basically between Lobo or the new Kendo, and I decided to go for Lobo, one, because it's got a cool full art, but also because if I do end up wanting to Digivolve this on top of one of my rookies, it's for 2, as to where the Kendo is for 3. But like I said, mostly this was just a test. It didn't really come in too crazy. I also sided this in versus Yellow for the same reason, to where I just had more hybrids to be able to go in for like a turn where I go for like 4 or 5 hybrids. And it worked out all right. It wasn't too game changing, but I do like the idea of it, and I'll continue to test it. Next, we have one more Zoolong, which will be the third, because I have 2 in the main deck. This was mostly for the yellow mirror match, because there was just a lot of times where I was playing into yellow where I wanted to go into an early Zoolong, or maybe try to get in a Zoolong late game, and just having a third one gave me more consistency of hitting it. And also, every single time I've double a Zoolong in a game versus yellow hybrid, I have won very quickly, so I did like it here. I've also sided it against versus Cherubimon, because there's times where they can just go really wide, and having extra consistency with the Zoolong versus the Cherubimon can be nice, but I don't think it's necessary to side versus the Cherubimon, but it's definitely something you could. But this was mostly just supposed to be my yellow hybrid tech slot, kind of dedicated slot, and this is what I came up with. You could probably change it for a lot. I just saw a Zoolong being pretty impactful, so I decided to put another one in for consistency, but you could really put this in for whatever anti-yellow card you want. Now, getting into it, we have some anti-purple cards. I'll start off with the 2 Rattlestar. I started off with Rattlestar as a counter side deck card because I knew purple decks were going to be siding in Neo Devimon versus me, so I wanted something else besides Madoki that could help me versus that. So I decided to go with Rattlestar because Rattlestar not only helped me versus that, but it also helps versus other things in purple. For example, being able to bounce back maybe a Scatter Mode, or being able to bounce back something like a Cherubimon, because if they have 3 or more Digimon on the board, you can just bottom deck their Cherubimon. It ended up working out very well. The final game of the True Champ tournament, I did end up playing Rattlestar to bounce back their only ultimate and choking them at 1, left them with nothing but an analog on board, and it pretty much just won me the game right there, because they want their cards to die and not be bounced or put to the bottom, so that way they can draw. So when you bounce things back or put them to the bottom, it just gives purple a huge momentum loss. So I decided to go with the 2 Rattlestar. It just worked out really well. This was mostly just started as how do I side versus Neo Devi to kind of help that a little bit, and then Rattlestar just ended up being a card that is going to work versus most purple lists. And then 2 BT3 Mimi Tachikawa, the purple one. This one just because Lilith Loop did win the PPG event, and so I expected a lot of people to play it, so I figured by playing this, it would help versus things like Jack Raids, or just in general versus purple. They play things like the 1-drop Calling of Darkness or Darkness Claw, and so you can make it cost 2. I really only sided this in versus the Lilith purple that plays the Jack Raids, but if I see a purple deck that's playing Jack Raids, I'll side this in no matter what kind of deck it is, even if they're playing like Cherubi or Dan Devimon. If they're playing Jack Raids, I'll side this in because it just invalidates Jack Raids until they get 2 memory out, and if you get 2 of them out, if they Jack Raid, you gain a memory, so it's just really good in that type of deck. It really kind of is not something that they can play around as well, and it really kind of messes up the flow of the deck. So these were my anti-purple cards. They worked out very, very well in the purple decks that I have tested them against, so I'm very happy with this, and I'm going to continue with these. And then the last 2 slots of this side deck are going to be going to Avenge Kidmon. Now, this is mostly just a locals meta call because there's a lot of people who are playing 3 Musketeers in my locals, so this is just kind of something to play against them that'll be very helpful. I also thought it might potentially help versus Loop as well, although you don't necessarily need that much help. So I did side it in yesterday in the finals versus Loop, and I had it in my hand the whole time, and I never played it, and even at the very late game, I think I still had to play this for like 5, and it would have passed turn just to shuffle back a couple cards, so it didn't really work out versus Lilith Loop, so you don't need to side it in versus that. So this is just whatever this slot is, you can change it to whatever local meta call you want or whatever other meta calls you want. This is just because versus the locals, when I'm playing 3 Musketeers, this just makes it so much easier. This is like one of those cards where you make them like have to start the game over essentially, and they'll just kind of scoop if you do this versus them because you'll be so set up with Tamers that they can't really come back from it. So that's why I'm playing this, but I only sided it in once, that one game, the final game of the tournament yesterday, and it sat in my hand since basically turn 2 or 3, and it never got played, so didn't really do anything there, but did make an appearance. So this is going to be the 10 cards for the side deck, plus the main deck. Tonight, the day this video goes up, I'm going to be having a half case event at Rocky Mountain Collectibles going on, and I'm going to be trying to get a bunch of matches from that. So I'll be uploading those here, of course. So if you're interested in getting more deck lists or battle matches, be sure to like and subscribe so that way you can get notified when it comes up. But with that being said, I'll catch you all next time. I hope you have a fantastic day. Peace out.